Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 10th public hearing of the New York City Charter Revision Committee. My name is Ken Nye. I am the Secretary of the Commission, and I will be serving as chair tonight. Our chair, Carlos Isura, is joining us tonight via Zoom. I would like to recognize the commissioners in attendance today. We have Commissioner Max Rose. We have Commissioner Jackie Rowe Adams. We have our General Counsel, Ed Kiernan. And we also have other commissioners that will be joining us virtually. And as they're signing in, I will be introducing them. So at this brief moment, I would like to ask the commissioners present here to briefly introduce themselves before we get started.
It is evening time, right? So good evening, everyone. I am Jackie Rowe Adams again, and I am so glad to see all of you here because that let me know that you are concerned about what goes on in your community and in your city. And that's what the commission is all about, hearing some of the concerns about how you feel and what you need to see happen and what we could help you with. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey everybody, Max Rose. It's good to see some familiar faces here. Thank you all for your service and looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
I'd like to take this moment to introduce our chairman, who I know is joining us via Zoom, Carlos Isura, if you want to say a couple of words.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. We're winding down on some really, really important work, and I'm very excited about what we have heard, what we're learning, and I'm excited about the coming weeks. I want to thank again, as always, our executive director, our general counsel, and to all our fellow commissioners. I know it's been a lot of work in a short period of time, and I know that we all appreciate the work that you are doing. So thank you very much. I look forward to hearing the testimony this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. We also have Commissioner Christopher Lynch joining us virtually. Chris, do you want to say a few words?
Good evening, Staten Island. Happy to be joining you by Zoom this evening. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it out there today, but just looking forward to your testimony this evening. Listening to see what Staten Islanders have to say, and thank you again. Thank you for coming out and participating.
Thank you to all the. I would also like to time out to thank Dr. Brahim Ardalik, the Executive Director of the Staten Island University Hospital, for hosting us today. And I'd also like to thank Tim Hicks of the Staten Island University Hospital joining us, and would love for you to say a few words to us. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you so much. So my name is Timothy Hicks. I am an Associate Executive Director here at Staten Island University Hospital. So welcome to today's New York City Charter Commission. This is a forum to review the Constitution of the City of New York and develop further ballot questions for the voters on Election Day in November. I believe this is the 13th of 15 public hearings across all 5 boroughs, and the third to be hosted here on Staten Island. I would also like to thank Mayor Eric Adams and State Senator Diane Savino for choosing Staten Island University Hospital to host today's Charter Commission. I'd also like to welcome James Clinton from the Richmond County District Attorney's Office and a representative from Jessica Scarilla-Spanton's office as well. Staten Island University Hospital is a proud community partner, and we're grateful to be part of this important democratic process. At this time, I'd like to turn this back to Ken Nye, who will be chairing today's forum, who is also a native Staten Islander from Rosebank and a former New York City police detective.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate that. So we are here today to continue the Charter Revision Commission's citywide listening tour. We have traveled to all 5 boroughs, most of them multiple times so far, to hear suggestions from members of the public and experts on how we can change our city charter to improve the lives of all New Yorkers. Our charter, which is like the Constitution for the city, impacts our daily lives in many ways, from public safety to sanitation and everything in between. That is why it is so important to hear from members of the public, elected officials, representatives of the city agencies as we consider what recommendations to present to the voters at the general election on November 5th. I encourage everyone here who has not already done so to please look at the commission's preliminary report. And that includes a summary of what we have heard over the last month and staff recommendations. We look forward to hearing from everyone here tonight and will be considering new suggestions until our final public hearing on July 22nd. Future hearing dates are on our website, which is www.newyorkcity.gov/charter, and the comments may be submitted in writing to charterinfo@citycharter.newyorkcity.gov between now and 5 p.m. on July 12th. Tonight, we are going to begin by focusing on public safety, and we'll be hearing from James Clinton from the District Attorney's Office of Michael McMahon's office. James Clinton.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll be providing testimony on behalf of the District Attorney, Mike McMahon. Good evening. It is an honor and pleasure to appear before this body today, and thank you to Executive Director Diane Savino, the members of the New York City Charter Revision Commission, and Mayor Eric Adams for organizing tonight's incredibly critical hearing, for actively listening to the voices of hardworking Staten Islanders, and for seeking to improve the day-to-day functions of city government and quality of life for all New Yorkers. As Staten Island's chief law enforcement officer, I remain deeply concerned that the public safety challenges facing all 5 boroughs are not being addressed with the seriousness and deliberative, transparent process that is necessary to restore both public safety trust and peace of mind to all New Yorkers. While I'm incredibly proud of all the work we have done in my office, together with our partners in the NYPD, neighboring law enforcement agencies, and those who call our borough home, unfortunately, crime and issues of public safety continue to dominate the concerns and mindset of everyday New Yorkers, who unequivocally tell us they do not feel safe in our city and do not feel that our legislative leaders are doing enough to address their very real concerns. Mayor Adams has said time and time again, public safety is the prerequisite for prosperity. I agree with that sentiment, as I know many of you do as well. Why this task before you is so important. It is my understanding that Mayor Adams has asked this commission to focus on how New York City's charter can better contribute to public safety by increasing civic engagement, community input, and transparency when legislation is proposed that would impact law enforcement and matters of public safety. I wholeheartedly support and endorse these laudable goals and look forward to learning of the proposals you put forward to accomplish them in the months ahead. As someone who has spent many decades of my life in public service, working in our legislative bodies, first as a counsel to the New York State Assembly, the New York City Council, and then as an elected council member myself for several terms, as a member of Congress as well, I have a unique lens through which I view the evolving legislative landscape that has taken hold in New York. This lens has been further sharpened after serving in the past 8.5 years as Staten Island's district attorney. Yet too often over the past several years, demands for a more transparent and equitable criminal justice system, goals I and the men and women of my office wholeheartedly support, have time and time again led to policies crafted, drafted, and enacted without the advice, consent, and consultation from those of us in law enforcement who know these issues best. That needs to change. The devaluation and disintegration of a meaningful legislative process has directly led to a sea change of rushed, ill-conceived, and ill-planned criminal justice policies that have left police and prosecutors alike struggling to keep up and preserve public safety. I wholeheartedly support and endorse these laudable goals and look forward to learning of the proposals you put forward to accomplish them in the months ahead. As someone who has spent many decades of my life in public service, working in our legislative bodies, first as a counsel to the New York State Assembly, the New York City Council, and then as an elected council member myself for several terms, I have a unique lens through which I view the evolving legislative landscape that has taken hold in New York. There is an inherent importance to listening to stakeholders from all perspectives and ensuring a deliberative, transparent, and informed legislative process that includes input from experts from all sides on the policy and practical implications of the legislation, input from the impacted agencies, input from the public, input from fiscal agencies and watchdogs, and honed and tested with rigorous debate and hearings on the legislative floor and in the free media. The public has had enough of legislation that is hastily drafted by special interests and advocates, shared only behind closed doors with like-minded legislators, without real hearings or a substantive vetting by the public and press, without independent budget analysis or the proper fiscal backing, then passed in the dead of night without any real understanding or debate by uniformed legislators. We have seen so many bills in recent years with so much at stake passed in this form and fashion. And when the stakes are so high, as they are when it comes to public safety, this onslaught has led us to this place of public distrust, perpetual fear that our government is unable to protect New Yorkers. We propose that this commission recommend an amendment to the charter that ensures a more democratic, transparent, fiscally sound, and deliberative legislative process when it comes to issues of public safety. I therefore suggest a charter amendment be proposed that mandates any initiative that affects, directs, or mandates practices of the New York City Police Department, corrections, probation, district attorneys' offices, or related law enforcement agencies shall only be enacted in the same manner that a charter amendment be effectuated. I thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony here tonight, and I look forward to working with this body and its members to make Staten Island and indeed all of New York City a safer and more just place for all. Thank you.
Thank you, James Clinton. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments?
I want to thank you for that testimony. So my comment is you just keep up the good work in the DA's office. And it's so important that we all pay attention to public safety, because we have to let our voices to continue to be heard. So just keep working with the mayor, with the police department, and I heard you mention the fire and all the city agencies, and always know what's going on in your community. Very, very important. So I thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Our Commissioner Chris Lynch also has a question, and he's joining us on Zoom. Chris?
Hi, good evening. Thank you again for coming out to testify this evening. I just had a question in regards to, you had mentioned some about public distresses that are happening or that is going on since some of these bills have been passed. From your office and through your lens, what are some of those distresses that you've seen that have been overwhelming in Staten Island that you have seen as a result of some of those bills?
Sure. So I think in terms of the daily stresses Staten Islanders face when it comes to our public safety, it's rampant recidivism, it's adolescent crime. Last year, we saw a 40% increase in felony juvenile arrests on Staten Island. That should be concerning to everybody in this room. I think everybody understands the impact that recidivism has had on our community when we go shopping for basic household items and everything is locked behind a key, right? We have to buzz to get some toothpaste. These are, our quality of life has been diminished as a result of the public safety threats we face. So it's really a cascading snowball if we don't first tackle the public safety crisis.
Thank you very much, James. Want to take this moment also to recognize Commissioner Ruben Diaz. He's also joining us on Zoom. Ruben, if you have any words for our commission today?
Not at the moment. I'll just wait to see if I have any questions from the people who are testified. I just want to hear from the community. But good evening, all.
Thank you very much, Ruben. So our next speaker is James Michella from the Detectives Endowment Association. I'd also like to add that Rick Simplico, Vice President of the DEA, is also joining. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Acting Chairman, and Mr. Chairman who's on Zoom, and distinguished commissioners. As the chairman said, my name is James Michella, and I have the privilege of serving as General Counsel to the New York City Department Detectives Endowment Association, which is the union representing the interests of some 18,000 active and retired New York City police officers serving in the rank of detective. On behalf of the DEA, as we call it, and its members, we thank you for the opportunity to address the commission this evening during your tour of New York City. I'm joined today by the Vice President of the Detectives Endowment Association, Detective First Grade Richard Simplicio, 29-year veteran of the New York City Police Department and lifelong New York resident, as well as Detective First Grade Gregory Silverman, who joins us audience, 34-year veteran of the police department, as well as a lifelong resident of this borough, the borough of Richmond. The rank of detective is a special rank within the New York City Police Department. I don't think I need to say that to you, Commissioner. It serves the citizens of New York City, really some of the most diverse capacities you can imagine, including patrol, detective squads, emergency services unit, the terrorism task forces, the narcotics divisions, the vice divisions, the human trafficking divisions, and the special victim squad, to name just a few of the specialized assignments that the 5,400 active detectives perform every day in the city. I submit that no other rank impacts the lives of everyday New Yorkers and preserves public safety as much as the rank of New York City. And so it is with that in mind that we address the commission here to public safety. Our minds is one of the most important, if not the most important issue impacting the citizens of New York City. So we applaud the commission for particularly focusing on public safety, because our detectives risk their lives each and every day to preserve public safety here in the city. And then when people violate that public safety, they find the people that perpetrate those crimes that bring peace and closure to the families by that. So we are here to say tonight that the DEA unequivocally supports the proposed amendments put forth before the commission and contained in the commission's preliminary report relating to the passage of public safety legislation by the city council. Specifically, there must be a period of additional public review and input prior to a vote by the city council on any public safety related bill. Far too often, from our perspective, legislation is passed, such as what we submit was the ill-conceived and poorly drafted How Many Stops Act, which became law on July 1st of this year. Far too often, this legislation is passed which greatly impacts public safety in this city, with limited opportunities for vital input by those who the legislation impacts the most. So we are here to echo the concerns of District Attorney McMahon and our sisters and brothers in the New York City Police Department, Department of Corrections, and other public safety agencies who previously testified before the commission just several weeks ago, about the dire need for input by experts, affected agencies, and critical stakeholders such as New York City detectives prior to the passage of public safety related legislation. Having that additional time and obtaining that additional input and feedback is not only common sense, but it will strengthen public safety in our city, a goal I believe we all share. Having that additional time and obtaining that additional input can prevent knee-jerk reactions and poorly drafted legislation, which only makes our officers' jobs infinitely more difficult and thus effectively decreases public safety in our city. The DEA is also here this evening to draw the commission's attention to another issue impacting public safety in our city, and that is an overzealous and aggressive Civilian Complaint Review Board, the CCRB. As we know, Chapter 18, Section 440 of the New York City Charter, which established the CCRB, mandates that investigations of civilian complaints be conducted fairly and independently and in a manner in which the public and the police department have confidence. The CCRB has failed in that mandate. Detectives do not have any confidence in CCRB's ability to be fair or impartial. We respectfully submit to this commission that the CCRB is an agency that has taken recent amendments to the New York City Charter and have created an agency hostile and abusive to members of the NYPD. And we see that hostility and that abusiveness towards members from the very second they walk in the door at CCRB. Now, the other day, I was down in representing members at the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and they were being interrogated at length for what was a very basic civilian police encounter. And we were in the room for about 2.5 hours while the detective was listening and answering questions to that. And as I was leaving at about 12:30, we had gotten there at about 8:30 in the morning. As I'm walking out, and I noticed there were still at least 18 or 19 police officers still waiting in that waiting room from early that morning to be interviewed in regards to that. And it strikes me as really a waste of manpower in the way that they bring these officers down on complaints that really could be screened at a very early stage and determined to be, exonerated or not able to go forward to an investigation. And we believe that the DEA recognize the need for oversight over the actions of police officers. The DEA would never suggest that the CCRB does not have a valuable role in the checks and balances of our government. No agency should have unbridled, discretion in what they do. But yet CCRB has unchecked discretion. Who is watching them? It's the unchecked manner and the aggressive manner in which they are pursuing our officers and in which they operate that is alarming to the DEA. And it's something that we would like to bring to the commission's attention. We submit that the CCRB has gone way past what their charter mandate originally was. And you would be surprised to sit in on some of these interviews. And some of these investigations are nothing more than nitpicking each and every word that an officer says during an encounter, a highly charged, highly stressful encounter for which the officer is exonerated of any force that was used or the manner in which they stopped the individual or the police actions that they were taking. But yet CCRB substantiates a discourteous remark against them, or because they fail to provide a business card at the end of that encounter, and brings charges and specifications against that member, now requiring a months long, if not years long process of adjudicating those charges. So we truly believe that neither the public, the mayor, or the charter commission know the extent of the issues within CCRB. For example, we just want to give you, one or two examples of commission's time. But as you might know, final dispositions of CCRB complaints have to be by the board. right? And the way they structure it is a 3 board member panel ultimately votes on the final disposition in that case. Well, prior to it getting to the board, investigator investigates the complaint and comes to a recommendation. And that recommendation goes to the board, and the board is supposed to independently evaluate that case and then make their own decision. But does anyone know how those votes are made by the board? Does anyone know the process by which these votes by the board panel members are made? The short answer is no. We believe that the board members are ill-prepared. They spend only a fraction of the time necessary to adequately evaluate these matters which are vitally important to officers. And if board members are not spending the time required to examine these cases, then essentially what they're doing is just rubber stamping the conclusions of investigators who oftentimes are right out of college. They're young, they're inexperienced, unqualified, and in many cases downright hostile to the idea of what New York City police officers do each and every. And although we have been requesting for years the actual board votes, we've consistently been denied access to how the board votes on these cases. Just recently, we've gotten the last 8 months, we've been given access to the last 8 months of board votes on cases. And you'd be surprised to know, we're not surprised, but it's shocking to know that when an investigator recommends substantiation of allegations against an officer, some board members approve that substantiation 100% of the time without fail. They never disagree with the investigator's conclusion substantiating that case. So, not surprisingly, it is the board members appointed by the New York City Council and the public advocate that exhibit this 100 approval rate of substantiations. And I don't think anyone really knows that that's happening. Now, the police commissioner is entitled to only 3 appointees on the board. So only 1 police commissioner appointee sits on any one panel deciding a case. And it's not as if the police commissioner appointee disagrees 100% of the time. As a matter of fact, their approval rates of the substantiations run anywhere between 50 and 85%. So they are paying attention to the cases. And when an officer does step over the line, they will recommend that the case be substantiated. But yet the city council and public advocate appointees 100% of the time approve substantiated cases. How is that possible? How is that possible if they are actually adequately reviewing these cases, or if they're not completely biased against the police? There is simply no way that would happen if they had the adequate time and did not have a predisposition to substantiate these cases. So we believe there are important amendments to be considered to the charter, to Section 440 of Title 18A, that would know that these votes are transparent, so that when members of the board are voting, they know that that's going to be subject to scrutiny by someone. Someone is overseeing what they're doing. It's not a completely unchecked process. So, for example, measures of transparency could be that their board member votes are actually disclosed to the public. And that could be either in the CCRB's semi-annual or annual reports. It could be on the CCRB's website, much like, and I'm going to get into that in just one second, much like they put our officers' CCRB history on their public website for everyone to see. Well, the way the board votes on these cases should be on their public website as well. There should be rules or amendments that expand, adding at least one appointee that the police commissioner gets to appoint to the board to ensure a balanced and full and fair review of these cases and these recommendations by the investigators. And there should be rules establishing certain guidelines and measure and standards of full review. Because I submit to you, again, we don't have access to what they're doing in their deliberative process, but there is no way that three board members can review hundreds of cases in one sitting and actually have the knowledge and the intelligence and the ability to independently, right? What does the charter say? To fairly and independently and impartially look at and analyze these cases. So we submit to you that amendments to the charter would go a long way to the board voting process. And that is an important thing that this commission could consider. I also, just as an aside to that, this is an issue of the utmost importance to police officers, and that is the abusive way that the CCRB's website is used to publish the CCRB histories of our members. I don't think anyone realizes the extent to which the public display and the public parading of officers' CCRB histories are actually used against federal officers. And it is one of the biggest issues. If you poll the 30,000 plus members of the New York City Police Department, I guarantee you they will express frustration and dismay at how the website is being used. Kirby puts every single allegation, even allegations that are exonerated, unsubstantiated, or even if they were substantiated, if the member went to trial and was found not guilty at a trial of that allegation remains on the CCRB's website forever, never to come off. And there is no process or procedure or due process, again, even if they go to trial and win, that stays on the public website for all to see. And I can't tell you how many officers have come to me that in retirement went to look for jobs, have been denied job opportunities because of things that are contained on that website. I can tell you that officers see it as a big problem because it follows them throughout their career on the NYPD. It stops promotional and transfer opportunities, and it indeed inhibits them even post NYPD.
James, let me interrupt you for a second. Would you say that the process of the CCRB thereby would curtail proactive policing that could hinder public safety?
Commissioner, I think that's exactly the case. I think, and certainly the public parading, going down a CCRB, everyone has to answer for their job. Everyone has to answer for actions they take on their job. Police officers understand that. The vast majority of New York City police officers understand that. If they're involved in a situation and someone is injured or somebody feels that they weren't treated fairly, they have to answer questions about that. But from the very moment that they get called down to CCRB, that they're questioned for hours by a young investigator, an experienced investigator who has no knowledge of what it's like to be a police officer and the stresses and the dangers that they face on the street, all the way through the end of the case when this disposition is paraded on the public website, it disincentivizes officers from wanting to engage with civilians. And ultimately that adversely impacts safety in this city. The representative of the district attorney's office talked about some of the distress and Staten Islanders are going through. To us, there's a lack of respect for law and order that's going on in the city. I think we all see it. At times, it's a downright lawlessness that's happening. And we see it in the little things, the people double parking their cars anywhere they want it, people taking things from shelves without fear of any repercussions. Police officers don't want to engage with members of the public because they know as soon as that happens, it's a complaint is filed, they lose, the manpower is lost, they get dragged through the mill down at CCRB unjustifiably. And again, we are so far from what the CCRB was intended to do. If an officer uses force and someone is injured and there's a significant, incident, of course, someone has to
I'll
answer
agree
for
on that.
that.
But I
these
wanna
little
thank you.
nitpicking of each and every encounter that an officer has, it disincentivizing them from wanting to engage with people. And when you disengage from the public, that's when people feel emboldened. That's when the criminal element feel emboldened. And that's what we find exhibiting in the city. New York City police officers will always do their job. Detectives will always do their job. They don't shy away from the difficult job. But the way the system is set up now, it is a complete disincentive, incentive.
James, I want to thank you very much for your testimony in front of this commission today. And I think that some of the points that you brought out does warrant a deeper look into the CCRB. With that being said, any commissioners have any comments, questions?
Thank you, commissioners.
You said a lot. You said a lot
I
and,
have a lot more to say.
yeah, you said a lot and a lot of good stuff and serious stuff, but then some things that we don't know. And not only the commission, but people need to know. So what I'm asking, because you touched on when you talked about the appointments of the CCRB, are you saying to the commission that you would like to see that? That's one of the things that you would like to see change, how they appoint people. And then you touched on, it sounded like harassment of the police, the CCRB, and nobody's watching them. Are you saying that the commission need to look at who's monitoring the CCRB? So it's several things you said.
Exactly. I think, first of all, with respect to monitoring, that is a basic question. Who's watching the watchers, right? Who is the oversight for them? This department has no less than 10 agencies that now look at everything that they do. The CCRB, the District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Department of Investigation, the Inspector General's Office. The list goes on, and now the Attorney General has its Office of Special Investigations. The list goes on and on. Is there an Inspector General for the CCRB? Is there any agency that oversees what they do? I don't think so.
So this is with you. I just wanted to say, I hear because I spoke to 615 new recruits this morning at the police academy. And some of what you said, not only on the CCRB, but about public safety, period. You know, and to be careful how in the community, the things that you do and things have changed. But I went deep, you know. And so I appreciate what you said, and we hear you. And so much stuff. So I guess we got to work on something. So once again, thank you. And I feel that you all are doing great work. Is everything perfect? No. But we're going to get it fixed together.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker will be Michael Ryan, Director of New York City Board of Education. Board of Elections, I stand corrected. Also recognize Deputy Director Ignazio.
My name is Michael Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Elections in the City of New York. Thank you for giving the board the opportunity to offer some testimony. I understand that there will not be a recommendation coming out specifically related to elections. However, I've had a conversation with the Executive Director and it was agreed that it would be a good idea for the city board to offer some insight into what's been going on with elections for the last several years. It might seem arbitrary, but we picked a date going back to 2019. It's not as arbitrary as it seems. There was a legislative turnover, if you will, in 2019, and that led to quite a number of legislative changes that directly affect elections in the city of from the state level. And then in the city of New York, I'm sure those of you that vote in municipal elections have voted with ranked choice voting going back to the 2021 primary elections in June, which was also a big change. We do not have prepared testimony for this evening, but we're here to offer some comments. I would like to add, though, we had a discussion. I answered to a board of 10 commissioners, and it was understood that there would be no question and answer back and forth, which is the circumstances under which I received approval from the Board of Commissioners to attend. Had I known that there might be, I would have sought different approval, but I did not. In any event, what I'm holding here is a printout of the legislative changes that went back from 2019 to 2023, and there were 156 separate items of legislation over that 4-year period that directly affected elections. Now, some of that is housekeeping, if you will, regarding how elections are conducted. But the things that you would see as a voter are some of the things that I'd like to touch on. First, in 2019, which was a big year, we had early voting was established for the first time, which is required for 9 days, starting with the first Saturday before the election, about 11 days before the election, for all contests. So that's general elections, primaries, and special elections, despite the fact that there's a compressed time frame for the conducting of special elections. We still have to do the 9 days of early voting. The good thing that also came along with early voting, though, was the permission to use electronic poll books. And for those of you that go to vote and vote regularly, I'm sure that you're as pleased with that advancement as we are. And on the front end, much more user-friendly for the voters. On the back end, also allows us to establish voter history in a much more seamless and error-free way than we had in the past. Also, there's also been changes to the absentee balloting process. And more recently, changes regarding early mail ballots. In other words, you can request an early mail ballot separate and apart from an absentee ballot. They function the same, but you can request such a ballot for almost basically any reason you want to vote early and you want to get your ballot out of the way. The thing that the voters need to understand with respect to that, however, are if you request an absentee ballot now, the only way to vote at a poll site on election day is by affidavit ballot. Used to be able to request an absentee ballot and then go to the poll site and vote. And if you voted at the poll site, your absentee ballot would be voided. That is no longer permissible. You have to, if you request an absentee or early mail ballot, you will not be able to vote at a poll site on the voting machine. You could still cast an affidavit ballot. There are another 13 or 16 or so additional changes to the elections process in 2024. And I think the biggest one, though, of all of them is the John Lewis Voter Rights Act that was passed and went into effect for 2023. This document that I'm holding are the 26 pages of guidance given by the Attorney General's office with respect to the John Lewis Voter Rights Act. I didn't bring it simply as a prop. I brought it also to provide information that the voting process is complex and changes to the voting process are complex. And the Attorney General's office right now is dealing with the complexity of elections and the complexity of the Attorney General's office new responsibilities with respect to elections. And they're working diligently with state and local elections officials to make sure that not only is the John Lewis Voter Rights Act lived up to in spirit, but lived up to in deed. And that is still a work in progress. Coming up in 2025, we're going to have a second round of ranked choice voting for the second time in the history of the city of New York. So that's another level of complexity that we have to deal with at the city board. I offer all of that for the simple proposition that a lot of changes have already been made with respect to the elections process over the last several years. And I think it would be understandable and advisable for this commission to take the position that it did, which is, to defer down the road a little bit any changes that may be made to the elections process. We have a lot on our plate, both at the city and state level. And some of these new things are taking root. And we're certainly here to facilitate all of those new changes. We are what they call a ministerial agency. So we don't necessarily advocate publicly for legislative change, but we certainly advocate and work diligently for the implementation of that change when the duly elected officials implement such. Mr. Ignazio, you have anything you want to add? Well,
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan.
yes,
That was
thank
some
you.
very
All right,
insightful stuff. Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone have questions? No?
No?
Okay.
Spelled it out.
And thank you very much for your time and the hard work that you all are doing as well.
Next speaker will be Michael Arvanites. Hope I'm saying that correctly.
Hello, how are you, Commissioners? Michael Arvanites on behalf of Councilwoman Camilla Hanks. I just wanted to say to the esteemed members of the Charter Commission, especially my former boss, Diane Savino, hello, and it's always great to see all of you. I'm here on behalf of Councilmember Camilla Hanks, present the changes she would like to see in how our city is governed. First and most prominently is the nonprofit funding issues, Chapter 5, Section 92, and Chapter 10, Section 225. I believe the controller has already testified on this issue. It's untenable and unacceptable to expect our nonprofits to provide essential services and programming, including payroll, without timely payment. While we demand these services to be delivered on time and consistently throughout the year, starting from July 1st of any fiscal year, we often fail to pay these nonprofits promptly, often paying them in April, May. This leads them to incur out-of-pocket expenses and make poor financial decisions. We'd appreciate it if this situation didn't. Secondly, revenue streams for borough commissioners. You might be aware of the recent succession movement in borough. What we would like to see is a little bit more local control. Borough commissioner have some sort of revenue stream that they could dedicate towards local projects that don't rise to the citywide level. This would be under Chapter 14, Section 374. Franchises and concessions. For example, the Department of Environmental Protection has 4 facilities on Staten Island. They're all located in commercial or industrial zones. They could easily erect a billboard in those C4 zones and use those for advertising revenue instead of taking money out of your pocket and my pocket for increased water. These dedicated revenue streams for borough commissioners could benefit prioritize local projects. Let me give you an example. Department of Parks and Recreation obtaining greater revenue from locally controlled concessions, which they would be able to keep, would incentivize them to improve our parks concessions. If you walk down the block, there's the promenade and then the boardwalk, and we have empty parks buildings because there's to be utilized because that money just goes back to the general Parks Department. Department of Transportation could generate revenue from speed and red light cameras for their to improve the actual roadscape for pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers, making a safer roadway. Department of Environmental Protection could, as I said, generate revenue by advertising at their facilities. And the Department of Sanitation, for instance, collects hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal dumping fines, which again, go to the general fund instead of having the sanitation department allowed to prioritize local cleanups. This would provide each borough commissioner with, or the major borough commissioners with a dedicated local funding stream for them to use at their discretion for borough-based public works projects that are extremely important to the borough, but do not rise to the city level of importance, such as the recent North Shore Rail cleanup or the Allison Pond dredging that we're currently seeking. And then 2 more points: modernizing documentation for city services. All documentation for city services should be allowed to be submitted electronically with e-signatures or forms. We all do this in basically every other transaction that we have throughout the day. I recently sold a house. It was done on electronic signatures. This would create a database, so every time that you interact with the city agency, there's no need to obtain or keep original documents, since the agency would documents electronically anyway. And finally, establishing a new Office of Disaster Assistance. We recently introduced Intro 964. It's a bill that creates disaster assistance centers. OEM does big stuff. They prevent, the Office of Emergency Management, tries to prepare people for major disasters. Hurricane Sandy, of course, comes to mind as we sit here in Ocean Breeze. This neighborhood was decimated by that. But the small fires, gas explosions, building collapses, there's no real mechanism to assist people that have gone through losing. And it could be as big a disaster to a single family as Sandy was. Thousands of Staten Islanders, South Brooklynites, and South Queens residents. So we propose the Office of Emergency Management create a new Office of Disaster Assistance that would help New Yorkers not only with major weather events, but also the small disasters like fires and building collapses. Folding the Mayor's Office of Housing Recovery into a new disaster assistance center will allow OEM to facilitate and aid those who are affected by these disasters, both large and small, from hurricanes to gas explosions. And they often receive less direct assistance from the city. However, the affected families are devastated. And other than that, that's just what the.
Thank you very much for your testimony today. We appreciate that. Our next speaker will be Michael Trollo from the Concerned Citizens Westerly Civic Association. Michael?
Forego any preamble. I'll forego any preamble to what I'm here to address. My points are more general and go across the line of all the amendments that are proposed currently. The challenge being, and I support a lot of what was said tonight in terms of public safety and so on, but there has to be a mechanism about issues having to do with public safety, having to do with zoning. Unfortunately, right now, most of the council people and city councils are an entity unto themselves, and they don't necessarily reflect or the tenor of the communities they're supposed to represent. Got to be a means by which more of what is going on, things that have to do with zoning, things like City of Yes that are up there, have to be brought before the public for votes, not just decisions made wholly by the city councils. Same thing with the issues as was mentioned with the CCRB. There's a lot that goes on with that group that is not seen by the public and needs to be addressed. There's far too much in the city of New York right now that is being handled by independent despots who run agencies. I think a lot of the problems that we're having currently having to do with migrant situations, the crime situations are all because we're allowing individuals to make decisions on behalf of communities that they don't properly represent. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your testimony. Our next speaker is George Tormo, Staten Island Strong. George, just please speak directly into the mic.
Yeah,
getting
this is gonna be
feedback
a little
that,
tough. I wasn't ready. for
audio's
this,
trailing
but,
off.
You know, Staten Island Strong is committed to upholding respect, care, and support for our esteemed veterans and seniors who have greatly contributed to our nation and community. We stand united against justices and ensure their fundamental rights as acknowledged and safeguarded. Recent events at Island Shores underscore the importance of prioritizing the well-being and dignity of our elderly and veterans over profit-driven decisions. Our pledge is to prevent such injustice from being repeated and to ensure our seniors and veterans receive the honor and respect that they deserve. As a critical step forward, we advocate for enacting the Island Shores Law to protect veterans and seniors from wrongful evictions, ensuring their rights are preserved. For advocacy and awareness campaign, we aim to cultivate a community where every individual, especially our veterans and seniors, is valued. Let us join forces campaigning the enactment of the Island Shores Law, guaranteeing that the veterans and seniors are never displaced for benefit or others. Together, let's continue our unwaveringly support for those who have selflessly saved our nation and community. I'm George Tormo. I'm from Midland Beach. I lived here 51 years. My family brought me over from the Bronx. We moved here when I was 10 years old. I've seen this neighborhood go up and down like a roller coaster. And there's a facility there that we had veterans and seniors, and they were misled. They were told them they were selling the building, they were going into a different venue. And actually, I'm looking at the sign of one of the people that went there to look to take over the building, Northwell. Once they got these seniors out, that I'm still in contact with a few of them and their struggles. I have one veteran that's 95 years old being taken care of by his daughter that's over 60 years old, you know, and I have another one that's in another nursing home. He gets $5,400 a month. They take 52. Meanwhile, he has co-pays for medicine. And if he has to go to any doctor's appointment, the ambulances, they're already in the red. I'm trying to locate a lot of the people, trying to help them out. We're trying to organize and we want them back. You know what I mean? This facility has been a problem. About 30 years ago, we had another problem with them. Unwed mothers, and that was fine. And then it turned into men, and then it turned into all kinds of drugs and stuff into the neighborhood. The only peace of mind that we ever had here was when that was Island Shores for the senior living. And my father's a World War II vet. I rest his soul. And that's why I'm a little more committed, being that it's my neighborhood and being that my father was a veteran. And the hardest thing that I had to do in my life was to put my father in a nursing home. And God forbid that I had to get him out of there because of this move now. And you know what? I'm kind of happy that he ain't around to see this. My father was a true American. He loved this country. He came from Puerto Rico and he fought in World War II. And I just really feel like it's a disgrace to not only to the people of Midland Beach, but the people of Staten Island, because there's no research done. There's no, like, we have a civic there. Nobody came down and sat down with us and it's proposed this. They just plopped it right into the neighborhood. And the neighborhood's a beautiful neighborhood. You know, like I said, we got destroyed by Sandy. We rebuilt from there. So many things that went on in this neighborhood. And I didn't prepare no speech. I didn't prepare nothing. I'm speaking from my heart. And, you know, I feel like I have to be here representing the neighborhood. And I think there's maybe a few people on Zoom that will be here too. But I just feel like there was an injustice done.
I want my seniors and veterans back because these, I have nothing against the migrants or illegals that are in there, but you know what? They're unvetted. It's not their fault. They were given a free pass to come in here, and which they took advantage of, which I have no complaints with that. But it's the way it was done. There was people there living. Wasn't a vacant building. They were living there. They were situated there, and then they got thrown out. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for your service.
I'm Sal 140. I'm with George, one of his partners.
What was your name again, sir?
Salvatore 140, middle and B. The mayor in the city signed a contract with this Homes for Homeless, $9 million a year. They tripled the money they were making as assisted living. Want the contract dissolved. They did this 30 years ago to the community. Jot it down. They opened assisted living. We loved it. Want the mayor to come talk to us because nobody come down to talk to us. Been mistreated down in the community. All right. We're out there, we protest every night. Protesters. There for our seniors and our veterans. A law has to be put in place. If you have assisted living, they can't just turn it into a shelter. Protect the seniors and the veterans.
Thank you for your service as well. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone?
Hi. So I feel your pain. I hear your cry because I'm a senior. So what would you like the commission to do? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Other facility. What's going to stop this from going on? You know what I mean? It's there's a lot of people in here that are affected. There's a lot of people that are scared to do anything. They're just muscling through this.
Right. So,
You know
but
what
I
I mean?
heard that. I heard that part. I heard everything you said.
No.
We heard everything you said, but what do you want to see the commission do?
To be heard. We need to come down, see what's going on, feel us. You know what I mean? We're over here. Listen to me. We just want a safe place for our veterans and seniors. That's all we want.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I loved my mother and father to death. And and you know what? As I'm getting older, I'm feeling the love for other seniors.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Agnes Vandina, Oakwood residents.
Hi, my name is Agnes Vandina. I'm Vice President of Oakwood Resident Civic Association. Staten Island, it includes Oakwood Heights and Oakwood Beach. And the reason we incorporated a few years ago was one of our neighbors was viciously, brutally assaulted when she arrived home to her home and pulled her car in front of her house. After the police investigated, she was injured. She had head injuries, shoulder injuries. When the police investigated, New York City police, they realized the man who assaulted her was just kind of hanging around Guyan Avenue. There's a lot of hiding in the trees, the brush, and he came off the train station. He was never found. So that's the reason we incorporated public safety and crime prevention is very important. That's the #1 issue to our members. Thanks to District Attorney McMahon at the time, he got in touch with the MTA State Police. They're responsible for patrolling our trains on Staten Island, not the New York City Police. We're similar to the LIRR. We're not a subway. So we spoke with the MTA police captain. He increased patrols. He increased the robustness of patrols. We are a community that supports our law enforcement. We want the police funded. We don't want them defunded. We respect our police. And when I brought this up at other meetings, other city representatives had said, oh, you don't have crime on Staten Island, you're the safest borough. That's not by accident that we're the safest borough. We work at it. We work within our families, we work within our communities, and we work with our law enforcement. And just out of 30,000 police officers in New York City, in Staten Island, we only have 729. And we're 500,000 people. Our percentage of the population would be approximately 5% of New York City population. So 5% of 30,000 would be approximately 1,500 police officers. We have only below half of that. So it's not enough. We want more police. We believe the presence of police is a deterrent to crime. And we pay taxes, a lot of taxes. And we want somehow that you will lift the baseline for our police officers on Staten Island. It's 700 something is laughable if it wasn't so potentially deadly. And we are losing our young families with children. As you know, the population of school-age children in the city is declining precipitously. Families with young children are moving. And not because of affordability, anecdotally from families that live here, they're moving because of the crime. It's not just the crime on the streets, it's the crime in and around the schools. There was a shooting at Tottenville High School. Yeah, before last. This past year, there was a shooting on a school bus coming from an intermediate school where a young man was stabbed to death. You know, if my family was young today, I wouldn't stay either. You know, they're moving to New Jersey. It's not affordability. That's not the issue. The issue is crime and the safety for their children. So they're moving to New Jersey, Pennsylvania. They'll pay the higher taxes if the schools are good and safe. They're not good and safe here. So we would like the Charter Commission to increase the baseline for our police and refund them. Also provide the qualified immunity again, so police officers can do their job. Not dissimilar from what physicians have in terms of malpractice insurance. There has to be a way that the city can provide that to the police. So that's our thought on public safety. The other thing I'd just like to bring up is there seems to be a loss of local control over our land use in the outer boroughs. On Staten Island, we have community boards, but their land use decisions and votes are only advisory, and we believe they need to be mandates. For instance, we recently have had a lot of community board participation because of planned placement of the state licensed cannabis stores, marijuana stores. People really don't want them here. As you saw in Bay Ridge, we've had community board meetings where we've had parents and parishioners and clergy and school parents testify they don't want it there. The community boards have voted no. Their policy now on Staten Island, Community Board 2 and 3, is there anything that's coming down from Albany, they're sending back no. We don't want it, but we need to have local control. You know, for the values of the communities here, we need local control of land use. The city council doesn't represent us. We didn't vote for, there's 51 city council members. We only voted for 3 of them on Staten Island. So the other 40 something or whatever's left don't represent us, and they shouldn't be making policy that affect us, independent of what we want on Staten Island. And that's it. So we hope that you would do something to improve public safety, crime prevention. We don't want crime. Violent street crime is no on Staten Island. We don't tolerate it in our communities. And if you could increase the baseline number of police for us, for every borough based on population. If the crime rate is higher in some areas, then they'll need more types of police officers. But we need a baseline. 700 and something is terrible. And also, we want control over our land use. There's too much centralization of the power to city council now, or to people in Manhattan, or to city agencies. You know, the borough president, we elected. Our community, he appoints for our community boards, and that's how land use should be determined.
Thank you.
And that's.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Florence Petruzzelli.
Okay, this is a little out of my comfort zone, but I feel the need to address certain issues. First of all, with the election, my daughter's been in Florida for over 20 years now. She has called the Board of Elections. I have called the Board of Elections. She's registered to vote in both states. I'm sure she's not the only one that has that issue. If we were different people, she can vote in both states in person. So that's one thing that really needs to be addressed. As far as, I want to reiterate what Mike was talking about earlier about the community not being informed of what's going on. Until I got involved with the migrant situation at Villa, I was unaware of a lot of the things that were happening within our own community, such as the City of Yes, and talk about taking care and watching out for the safety of the people, the battery dispensaries that are going to be put on Staten Island. That's not safe, no matter how you look at it. These are issues that need to be brought to the forefront so the people can make the decision, not the people who don't live here. There's so many things. Who do we address? Every time, the last time I went to this meeting, I was told that the City of Yes had nothing to do with this. The dispensaries had nothing to do. Where do we go? Who do we speak to? How do we address it?
That's a great question. In regards, this is the City Charter Revision Committee. So what we're here to do is to review the entire charter, which is the constitution for the city. So what we're doing here is examining that. And if it doesn't fall under our purview here, we're here to listen to everyone. So we would like to probably move you over to one of our staff members here that can direct your concerns to the proper channels to be reported. But again, this is a charter revision committee where we're examining each of the things that are outlined in the charter so that we can take a good look into it and make revisions that we feel that are necessary. This doesn't, I don't think, fall under that, but again, I think we can move her over to our staff members that can definitely help you address those concerns and make sure it lands at the right doorstep.
Okay, that's fair.
Thank you very much for
you.
testifying today.
Okay. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carla Mohan.
Good evening. Thank you. I was not
you.
prepared to speak, but I feel compelled, as always. I'm a mom, I'm a Staten Islander. My neighbors, I must reiterate their concerns, public safety, City of Yes. And I will have to say the sanctuary city issue of New York City. Last year, a federal judge, Judge Wayne Ozzie, ruled in favor of the resident living next door to St. John's Villa that the executive orders put upon our city and the emergency that was caused was man-made. And that also those executive orders did not substantiate what our city is being taxed with, that it's unsustainable to to care for the hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants that are now living in our city, that is put upon not only Staten Island. At first, Staten Islanders were frowned upon when we voiced our concerns. Now it is the whole city that is concerned. Judge Ozzie also ruled that, and you mentioned the charter being as the constitution of our city, that the Sanctuary City Act was just policy and not law. And when it was created back in, I believe, the 70s, it was created in mind for the folks living in the Bowery, and they were New York citizens. And I would hope that the charter would look deep into the language and a federal judge ruling on this specific major concern that is crippling our city, our citizens. So many New Yorkers that need services are either that's being strained because of outside now stress. So that's probably my main concern that I would hope that the Charter Revision Committee will definitely look into. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker will be John Felsey. Is that correct? Bill?
The first thing I want to say is thank you for having me. In full disclosure, I'm not a professional speaker. As most people in here, I'm a little out of my comfort zone. I'm also a 21-year throat cancer survivor, so if I should say something that you don't understand, please ask me. All right? As most people in this room have expressed, I know most of the people in this room. I'm here for myself tonight. I'm not attached to an organization. However, I am involved with many of the groups in this room. All right, so just bear with me because I wrote this in between working today, so you really got to bear with me. And I promise you I'll get there. This is short. All right, so I'm presently a geriatric caseworker, and I advocate for the older adult population on Staten Island predominantly. However, through the city and throughout the country, as we know, the older population is growing and increasing. I also spent 21 years as a peace officer within the city of New York. So I'm a lifelong New Yorker. Okay. Here's what I'm here to request for you guys tonight. And I did really not do my homework on this, which I usually do, and I will write a full testimony and submit it to you guys. I'm requesting that the commission reviews the New York City Sanctuary City policy. Right? As we know, it's not a law, it's a policy. I'm not throwing down the mayor. And again, I'm going through my notes, bear with me. I'm not throwing down the mayor, but I do have a hard time following his thoughts or concepts on not only Sanctuary City, but right to shelter, right? I have been involved with the asylum seeker actions on Staten Island. So this is not an anti-migrant immigrant statement. What this is just my request to you guys to look at Sanctuary City and where it falls under keeping everyone safe, right? We have unvetted people coming here and we are where we are. However, unvetted, NYPD under Sanctuary City does not communicate. If I'm wrong, but I will add this in my written testimony if I'm right. Under Sanctuary City, NYPD does not communicate with any federal authorities if a crime occurs in the city. So a low-level crime occurs, nobody's communicating. We have, let's just say, a more serious crime. So that is kind of in a nutshell. And again, I apologize for, this is not an anti-immigrant approach that I'm requesting. It's a safety and a common sense approach. So I will again just request that you guys review Sanctuary City and let's fill in the holes where they need to be filled in. And I thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you, Mr. John Kelsey. We're now going to move over to our participants on Zoom. And the first one from Zoom is Bradley Tusk. Bradley Tusk.
Hi, can you guys hear me? You guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yes. Great, thanks so much. Great, thank you so much for having me. Back in 2002, I was the director of the Charter Commission, so I remember these hearings both fondly and slightly painfully too, depending on how they went. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I'm not from any specific organization. I'm a venture capitalist in New York City. I've got a political background. I was Mike Bloomberg's campaign manager in 2009. I own a bookstore on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, a political consulting firm, and a bunch of other things like that. And I write a column for the Daily News, and this is actually my column that ran yesterday, and it's what I think the Charter Commission ought to consider putting on the ballot. So if you ask yourself, what are most New Yorkers concerned about, and you look at any polling at all, it's pretty clear. They're concerned about crime, and they're concerned about quality of life. They want things to feel less chaotic. And you know what? They're tired of judges who continually let career criminals loose, regardless of their prior record, regardless of their specific actions, regardless of who they hurt or the damage they caused. There's example after example of judges who refuse to do their jobs, refuse to protect the public. Their extreme ideology trumps everything, and that's led to a shoplifting epidemic. It's led to a cycle of mentally ill people released back onto the streets in some ways to continue to terrorize us all. And it's created a very strong perception that the city is unsafe, and that hurts business growth, it hurts tourism, it hurts retail sales, it hurts taxpayer retention and more. I would love the Charter Commission to propose a ballot measure to rein in judges whose decisions are out of tune with the views and needs of the people, allow the voters to trigger a hearing to determine whether the mayor should recommend that the governor and senator recall certain judges. The commission would choose a percentage, likely between 10 and 20%, of the number of voters who participated in the most recent judicial election to sign and file a petition authorizing a hearing to determine whether the mayor should refer a particular judge to the state for recall. If the judge is then recommended for recall by the governor and moved by the Senate, a special election is held to replace them. They are a mayoral appointee. The mayor appoints someone new. The judge would also then be disqualified from ever serving on the bench in New York again. The state constitution does not allow for recall of state or local judges. There have been several bills over the years to create a direct recall mechanism in New York. None have succeeded. Doing so would require amending the state constitution, which, as you know, the Charter Commission has no purview over. However, the city's municipal home rule law lays out the powers that local governments have to adopt and amend laws. Although it specifically prohibits the city from passing any law that supersedes a state statute relating to the courts, it does allow local governments to adopt or amend local laws regarding a number of subjects, so long as they are not inconsistent with state laws. By triggering a hearing rather than recall, this proposal is consistent with state law. The most specific benefit of the idea is moving bad judges from the bench and keeping them off forever. But even if the judge isn't ultimately removed, the risk of removal and public humiliation will force the vast majority of judges to finally start balancing their own ideology with the views and needs of the public. Once a few judges face potential recall, that will impact the thinking of virtually every judge in the system and help deter decisions that are egregiously out of line with both common sense and basic public safety. Judges are human beings. Humans hate stigma, shame, and humiliation. They will go to incredible lengths to avoid it. When judges can behave without any real scrutiny, accountability, or consequences, some will let virtually every criminal loose. We see that too often. But when they're under a public microscope, most will start behaving more responsibly, and those that do not can now be removed for life. Of course, direct voter recall of extremely bad judges would be even better. The far left's grip on Albany and the political party's own traditional patronage machine means that's not going to happen anytime soon. But the voters in New York City can take matters into their own hands and change the judicial culture that all too often seems completely indifferent to the needs of the people. If we want a safer city, if we want a better city, it's up to us to make it happen. That starts with you, the Charter Commission, deciding you're sick of a revolving door of criminals set free to strike and strike again and doing something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker on Zoom is Frank Morano. Frank, are you with us? Okay, we'll give him a moment to come back on, but we'll move on to the next speaker, and that will be Andrea. Andrea?
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Hi, I'm Andrea Lamberton, Manhattan resident and professional American Sign Language interpreter. Thank you for the opportunity to testify to the commission. I will keep my comments brief. I have 3 proposals for the charter that will benefit 30,000 deaf New Yorkers who use American Sign Language. Number 1 is add a chapter to the charter titled ADA Law and Disability Access. I have read the titles of all 79 chapters and scanned these chapters for the words Americans with Disabilities Act. I do not see a direct reference to the ADA, the masthead law that mandates reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities, specifically mandating ASL interpretation. While New York City does follow the law and does a good job providing ASL interpreters for public services, as a New York citizen, I know I'd feel better knowing that the law has been officially referenced in the charter. This would provide a legal cornerstone the deaf community can point to when private businesses, private dentists, veterinarians, and even lawyers do not provide ASL interpreters, stating it is not their responsibility and will not pay for one. And as an interpreter, I can testify that this still happens routinely here in New York City. Number 2 is CEC Local Law 30 recognizes 10 designated citywide languages that must be translated, but ASL is not one of them. I ask for Local Law 30 to be amended to add American Sign Language as a designated citywide language. So reading material such as websites, articles, documents, and news will be translated. This will require a budget and a staff of fluent signers to take printed information and create ASL videos. But agencies and schools that serve the deaf, as well as deaf-run businesses and services, do this routinely already. According to the New York City Language Access webpage, interpretation is defined as the facilitation of spoken communication between users of different languages. Translation is the transferring of written information from one language to another. ASL has no written form. However, the average deaf New Yorker does not read beyond a 4th grade reading level. This is a well-documented fact that is the national average and has not been updated. And it is a well-known fact among those working within the community, but there is a cultural taboo around keeping this information private. And there are reasons, or a great number of deaf New Yorkers are functionally illiterate that I would be happy to answer. And I will be submitting my written testimony with further explanation, but to suffice to say that it is a misnomer that providing written material is an equivalent reasonable accommodation for deaf people whose primary language is ASL. And finally, I propose the creation of a New York City Commission for the Deaf that provides guidance and support ADA enforcement, and creates the translations for all New York City agencies into ASL videos. This commission could also help create a citywide process for obtaining interpreters and case management across social services. I have specific ideas on how we can make that happen, such as what the American Dental Association has done, which is to create a code that follows patients needing interpretation across the system. A New York City Commission for the Deaf can ensure that interpreting services are not missed, causing deaf people to then have delayed surgeries, surgeries without interpreters present, court dates delayed, or even wait in jail cells longer because there is no executive body in charge of this ADA Title II service needed for 30,000 New Yorkers. I thank you for your time and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Liz Andrea here.
Good evening. My statement is regarding sanctuary city status. When this was put through by Mayor Koch with City Council, that was in 1989. It was a much safer world. 35 years later, where the world is extremely dangerous, this should not be the policy any longer. If the politicians think it is such a good thing, put a referendum on the ballot. Let the citizens of the city of New York, it's their taxpayer money that has to fund everything. It is their lives that is being jeopardized. Put it on a referendum, let the voters decide, not politicians. Politicians live in safe havens. They are protected. Normal citizens aren't. That's the first thing. The second thing is the right to shelter, which is not a law. Again, the citizenship is being burdened with millions, if not billions of dollars to feed, clothe, house, to provide medical, transportation, all for people who broke the law of the United States by entering the country illegally. And you have citizens of the United States that were never given the chance to go live in the Roosevelt Hotel. They're on the street, whether they be regular citizens or military. This is disgusting that we treat people that come here illegally, not knowing who they are, what their intentions are, treating them to a better life than our own citizens. Anything that's affecting the citizens' pockets that we have to pay, put it on a referendum and let us decide. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker is Frank Rappaciullo.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I couldn't think of a better person to be my opening act than the woman before me. I'm here tonight on behalf of Councilmember Minority Leader Joe Borelli. I'd like to bring up a matter of tremendous impact to public safety, which is our current migrant crisis. A bill recently introduced by Council Members Borelli and Holden and co-signed by several members of the Common Sense Caucus seeks to repeal and roll back our sanctuary city policies, something we believe a large portion of New Yorkers agree with, and I believe most people in the room tonight especially. Seeing the rise in crime associated with these illegal migrants is becoming a near daily occurrence, and the crimes seem to be getting worse each time. The fact that New York City policy prevents federal law enforcement agencies like ICE from assisting anybody that's in need and removing anybody who has caused issue. There are countless people who are currently residing in our city that have spent thousands of dollars and several years to pursue citizenship the legal and correct way. They understand that this is the necessary process and sacrifice to become a citizen of our great nation. We also have thousands of homeless veterans and other individuals who have seemingly been forgotten. Many would rather brave the elements and live on the street rather than enter a shelter system. I'm sure if they were offered, most would greatly appreciate living in an all-expense-paid New York City hotel room, something that many people who travel simply can't afford, and to receive prepaid debit cards for their daily spending, something that now we're realizing might be an issue with people selling them and other things. Such a program would no doubt help these people get back on their feet in many cases. By definition, a city charter revision commission may propose a broad set of amendments that essentially overhauls the entire charter or may narrowly focus its proposals on a certain area. We request that one of those areas be changing our city sanctuary policies and rolling them back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'd like to take this back to Zoom now, and we're going to call on Frank Morano. Frank?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me now?
We hear you. You're fine.
Great, thank you. Very frustrating to be screaming at a computer set and nobody can understand what I'm saying. Couple of quick things. I know you've had a long day already, and I won't keep you. I appreciate more than most, being a lifelong Staten Islander, how difficult it is for the non-Staten Island members of the commission to travel out here. One is I have been, since this commission was announced, trying to wage the same battle that many of you have been trying to wage very admirably in trying to get people to participate. And one of the things that I keep running up against, and this has been borne out in some newspaper editorial boards, some activist groups, some not good government groups, they have tried to cast a little bit of a pall on the work that you guys are doing on the commission because they believe that it's being done to just kind of big step the city council and prevent certain measures from being on the ballot. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but I don't necessarily think it should stop people from participating because the measures that you come up with and put on the ballot are going to count just the same as if they were the result of a 2-year commission that everybody's work was being praised by. So what I want to do here, and I've extended a number of proposals to you, and I hope you'll consider all of them, but given the condensed timeline here, I'd like for you guys to consider the things that can be put on the ballot without necessarily a great deal of study and that the voters don't necessarily need months and months to consider. And one has to do with the kind of asterisk that many people are going to place on whatever work you come up with. Currently, as you guys know, and as a lot of the people watching this know, any mayoral appointed commission gets to take the place of a city council question that's put on the ballot. It also gets to take the place of any question that's put on the ballot by the voters. What I'm asking you to consider doing is putting a question on the ballot to have all charter revision changes be considered equal, meaning if there's a mayoral appointed charter revision commission that can put questions on the ballot, but it doesn't prevent 50,000 New Yorkers from collecting signatures and putting our own question on the ballot. Because time and again, over the course of the last 30 years, really since term limits in '93, people have brought up the issue of, I'd like to put this on the ballot, I'd like to put that on the ballot. And inevitably, someone will say, well, why don't you just collect the signatures? And then someone who has a little bit more political pragmatism and realism will say, well, because if they don't want it on the ballot, the mayor will simply appoint a commission and get it bumped off. I'm asking you guys to make that change so that that doesn't happen. This would be good for you and your work and the work of all future commissions, because no longer would anybody be able to say that you're being done as some sort of a pawn to prevent questions from being on the ballot. Additionally, by letting the voters know that if they go out and get those 50,000 signatures to get a charter change of their own on the ballot, I think it might engender a new spirit of civic activism, which seems to be in short supply these days. It's not that people don't care about their community, they do. It's not that they're not knowledgeable about their community, they do. But there's just this pervasive sense of cynicism where they feel like they can't make a difference. They can't fight City Hall. And I think if you were to make that one change, simply have all charter revision proposals created equal, no commission bumps any other question off the ballot, I think it would go a long way towards that. Additionally, I'm grateful to the mayor for appointing this commission, but right now, if you want a charter commission change, unless you're willing to go to the lengths of getting 50,000 signatures on the ballot, or unless the city council appoints its own commission, which has only happened once, you're really dependent upon the mayor to do so. So what I'm asking this commission to do is follow the lead of the state legislature in that every 20 years, there's a question on the ballot asking the voters, should there be a constitutional convention? And if there's a process by which the Constitutional Convention is formed, that they can propose amendments to the state constitution. They can do away with the whole state constitution. And what I'm asking you to do is give New York City voters that same opportunity with the city charter. Give us, enshrined in the charter, every 20 years, the opportunity to answer the question, shall a New York City Charter Revision Commission be formed? Those two small changes can easily be put on the ballot this year, and I think they would leave you guys with a real great legacy and a place in history, and a history of New York City Charter Revision Commissions as somebody that really changed the whole paradigm as to how the charter revision process is viewed prospectively. Lastly, I have been speaking a great deal about empowerment of community boards. I proudly serve on Community Board 3, not to be confused with the chairman of Community Board 3, who's also named Frank Morano. Our community board is not even able to have full board meetings in person. We're told that's because we don't have the budget to rent a facility to do that. I have to tell you, and those of you that have participated in these meetings in person versus via Zoom know what a difference an in-person meeting makes, especially when it comes to public engagement. Really, what I think we need is a baseline increase in community board budgets that's independently enshrined as a certain percentage of the budget. We can discuss what that message should be, but there's no reason that community board members should have to come begging hat in hand to the city council every year, hoping that they can get money for technology upgrades, hoping that they can get money for staff, hoping they can get money for something as simple as just holding a meeting. So what I'm asking you to do is enshrine in the city council, in the city charter, or at least give us the opportunity to vote on that, independent budgets for community boards with a baseline increase each fiscal year. At this time, community boards are being asked to do more than they've ever been asked to do with less resources. And that's something that I think you can absolutely look at. And of course, as far as my previous testimony on electoral reform goes, the two easy fixes that wouldn't require any sort of approval from, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act or anything like that are: one, eliminating the signature requirement to run for office, allow people to run for office with simply a filing fee, and the other is make ranked choice voting in place for the general election. Having it in place for primaries and special elections is great, but it really doesn't make much of a difference except in a handful of races in terms of who gets elected. Having ranked choice voting in the general election, that's a real game changer, and that's something that I think I'd love to see this commission take up. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your work. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Frank Morano. Questions? Thank you. Next speaker on Zoom is Jasmine Robinson.
Yes, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. I would like to acknowledge Mr. Ed Josie. He's been trying to raise his hand. I would like to, if permissible, if he can speak before I do. He's been trying to use his raise his hand feature. I don't know. I think there might be a problem, but he's been trying to use his raise his hand feature to speak.
Okay, we do have him scheduled to speak, so we do acknowledge his hand being raised. So why don't you take this time to
Okay,
testify first?
okay, all right, thank you so much. I just wanted to acknowledge President Josie. Thank you so much to the commissioners for having this event. And also to making it available in person and also via Zoom, as we know that Staten Island is a bit of a transportation desert. And so we do have a hard time, depending on where you live, going out to certain parts of the borough. With that being said, my name is, I'm the Honorable Jasmine L. Robinson. I am female district leader of the 61st Assembly District. And I'm also first vice president of the NAACP. And at this time, I would like to give a special shout out to President Dukes on the call. And I just want to say thank you for being on the call as well and showing that Staten Island, the branch is showing up and doing our due diligence. And also to Diane Savino, thank you. And also Congressman Max Rose, your leadership is missed. Staten Island is often defined as the forgotten borough. But I would like to say we are the underestimated borough. We are considered having no ability, no influence or value. However, that is not the case. We are represented very strongly and boldly on this call, and we do show up time and time again. I do believe that there needs to be a ballot question or a ballot proposal regarding the issue of sanctuary cities. Everyone that arrives to the United States deserves an opportunity of a better life. We should not be in the practice of warehousing folks. Asylum seekers should not be housed in basements or schools. And there are many vacant apartments that could house asylum seekers. People should be housed with dignity. The burden of shelters are often placed in Black and Brown communities that are oversaturated with shelters and other facilities. And I'm speaking for this as a Port Richmond resident. We should not be demonizing anyone. I do agree there should be a ballot amendment regarding sanctuary cities, and also with regards to the other ballot proposals and recommendations in the preliminary report. I do agree that with most of everything that's in the report, and thank you for your time and attention to what I have to say. That concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker is Special Hagan, also on Zoom.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
I am glad to participate in tonight's session as well. I had a question about the the citywide training initiative that's being proposed by the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety. It seems as if that's going to be an initiative that's going to put the city on the map. And there's a question as to whether or not my question pertains to whether or not it's going to actually be an amendment to the charter to ensure that let's say this mayor doesn't get reelected, that the actual build out of the facility is actually accomplished and actually realized into fruition. And also whether or not the mayor plans on passing an executive order to support the building and construction of a universal training facility. That's it.
Oh, thank you very much for your testimony.
Mhm.
And now we move to Edward Josie on Zoom. Edward. Hear us?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ed Josie. I'm the president of Staten Island branch NAACP. Now, my concerns are not very deep, but they're important. I'm under the impression that the community board has no say where these shelters go for the migrants. If it's true or not, I don't know, but I'm concerned about that. I've heard that many times. Also, I've read in the papers recently where most of your shelters in New York City happen to be in the poorer neighborhoods. If that is true, it should be corrected because you're already taking a bunch of people who have issues to begin with, and you're adding more issues to that community. So there should be some way to not, we'll say, add more and more issues to these poorer communities. It was in the New York Post this past weekend. There was a map of New York City identifying where most of the shelters are, and most shelters happen to be in poorer neighborhoods. So those are my concerns. I hope you can do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have any comments or questions from our commissioners, either here or online? Commissioner
Just want to
Adams?
thank everyone for coming out. I love the borough of Staten Island. And let's keep spreading the word that the commission is very concerned about making sure that everyone get a chance to hear what's going on and have a voice. Thank you and get home safe.
Send a message, where exactly is the meeting? Should have been published, but they don't want it.
This is the final one on Staten Island. There's going to be one in Brooklyn. Next one's in the Bronx. On the 22nd, Queens. Commissioner Diaz, do you have any comments? Thank you. Commissioner Chris Lynch.
Yeah, it's just like to say thank you to everyone that came out this evening to offer testimony to us. It was enlightening, learned some great information today. So please just inform friends and family that live in different areas of the borough. We still have some meetings that are coming up. Thank you again for coming out.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say it's been a great session listening to everyone here on Staten Island testifying this evening. We have heard your concerns and your input will be taken into careful consideration. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this important process. And I want everyone to get home safely. Have a safe evening. And thank you again. Okay. Go ahead, Ruben.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say it was great to hear from everybody here in Staten Island. Yesterday we had an incredible evening in Harlem. And so as a resident of the Boogie Down Bronx, I just invite everyone, whether you live in the Bronx or not, to come and join us on Thursday. We'll be at Fordham University. You could come early, you could get a bite to eat at Arthur Avenue, but nonetheless, and more importantly, come out and let your voices be heard, whether you're from the Bronx or not. And come to the Bronx and let your voice be heard on what you think we should be considering in revising the charter. So good night to all, and I'll see you all there.
Thank you.
And just a reminder that any written testimony can be submitted by 5 p.m. on Friday at charter info, one word, at city charter, also one word, .nyc.gov. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn. Thank you.